Nick, if Kelly, Nikki and Jason, they dial in, you'll catch them in the waiting room, presumably, yes?
Yes, and I'll let them in immediately. If you start, I can give them a call and see if I can find them as well.
Yeah, I'm keen to press on, because we've got a lot of people on the call, but I'm equally keen that if we pass the point where we ask for declarations of interest, that we'll have to go back to that point for those three individuals if they do join late.
Chair, I spoke to Jason earlier. He was expected on the call, so he should be turning up. I've just tried to call Kelly. There's been no answer, but I'll keep trying.
Okay, we'll press on with the formalities. So let me welcome you all to the meeting of the Business Board. In terms of technical arrangements, today's meeting is being held by Zoom. Video conferencing will be recorded for governance purposes. If you experience any technical difficulties during the meeting, please refresh your connection in the first instance. Board members' participation will be monitored for quorum purposes. If it becomes apparent that we've lost members and are no longer quorate, it may be necessary to adjourn, and we may have to reconvene the meeting as a telephone conference. Can I also remind board members that this is a private meeting, which only Business Board members and specific officers are invited to. So trust that you're all in a secure and private place. Today's meeting was initially going to be an open public meeting. Board members will be aware that the Business Board has an obligation to hold one meeting a year in public, but at the last meeting it was agreed that the public meeting of the Business Board would be deferred until later in the year, so we can be truly open with the public, hopefully face to face. So just to ensure we've got an accurate roll call, could I just go around the boy and ask you to confirm you're in attendance, please? Tina? We heard?
Yes, sorry, yes, I'm here.
Faye?
Yep, here.
Good afternoon, Faye. Amir?
Yes, here.
Hi, Amir. Al Kingsley?
Yep, here.
Al Nitin?
Yep.
Rebecca? Rebecca? We've got Kelly, Nikki and Jason. Presumably they have not yet arrived.
Jason has arrived.
Jason's
Jason-
on.
Hi everyone. Sorry,
Hi,
having a little.
Jason. Goody, goody. Welcome. Andy Neely.
Yeah.
Mayor James Palmer.
Yes.
James. Councillor John Holditch.
Present, sir.
Thank you. And myself, Austin Adams. We have apologies from Mark Dorset. And hopefully Kelly and Nikki will join us as we go along. Dawn, have you had any other apologies from members?
No, Chairman, no.
Thank you. Okay, in terms of declarations, this is an opportunity to declare pecuniary interests in any or any other conflicts of interest. Do members have any conflicts to declare? John, your hand is
Sorry,
up.
Austin.
I can see John's hand's up. John, you're on mute.
That better?
That's better.
Okay. I said that I understand you're discussing the University of Peterborough today. I don't have a pecuniary interest, only an interest in providing it. And as I don't get a vote, I don't think there's any really need to express an interest.
Noted. Andy? Did I hear Professor Andy Neely? I think Andy's having some communications problems. Okay, anyone else? All right, goody. If Andy comes back in, we'll go back to capture his point.
Chair, sorry to interrupt. I've just had a message from Kelly. She's running a bit late, probably about 20 minutes or so. So when she joins, we might have to revisit this item as well.
Yeah, we'll do. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let's move on to the minutes of the meeting held on the 23rd of March. Are members happy that I signed the minutes of the meetings held on the 23rd of March as a correct record as they stand? Anyone not happy in any way, shape or form? Please shout now or put your hand up. Okay, we'll take that as a unanimous. In terms of the action log, do officers have any updates to any of the actions?
Yes, Chair. So if I can just bring in my colleague Emily. We've been working on the action log just to update it with officers. Emily, if you could just quickly run through what's been updated since the last meeting.
Yeah, of course. I will try and put it on my screen if that's.
Yes, thank you.
Nick, it's saying the host has disabled participant screen share. I'm not sure if you're able to amend that, please. But if not, I can just quickly run through the outstanding ones.
Just quickly run through, Emily.
Okay. So there's only one outstanding at the moment. We're just awaiting an update from Graham Bampton on the CAM project. That's the only outstanding one at the moment. So in terms of ones that we've closed since the last meeting, with me. Okay, so one of them was to host more frequent update meetings leading up to this meeting, which we've done, and we also put an interim meeting in place between now and our board meeting on the 27th of July. So we've got the meeting on the 22nd of June where we'll have further activity updates from officers. Another action to do with COVID was circulating the webinars that Business Board have worked to put together. So these are all available on the Command Authority's business support pages. And Dom, are you able to help on the one with the circulating the sample applications and linking them with the LEP network?
Yes, so Chair and board members, one of the outstanding action was that we would consider using or putting together an example application. This was early on in our COVID response activity to help businesses apply for bank loans or grants. But having explored other areas of support, that one wasn't taken forward. So we've decided to close that off if that's okay with the board.
Mm-hmm. Great. Okay.
Just one more outstanding action. So we're working one-to-one with business board members to assign leads as business board members to work with officers. That'll be based on work streams and our key lines of activity, and also working on stakeholder mapping so we can better communicate messages outwards and inwards into the business board and combined authority, utilising our business board business community contacts.
All right, Dawn, if you could just capture those last two that Dom referred to, because they're not captured in the action log formally because they weren't discussed at the last meeting.
Yes, Chairman, I will do.
That said, very pleasing to note that we've done an excellent job in cleaning up all of these actions with only one outstanding action to tidy up. Brilliant job. Thank you. Okay, let's move on to item 1.3.
Sorry, Austin, can I just point out something? In
Sure.
the papers, on page 3, it's got a page which talks about membership of the board, and it's the old membership. It's got William Hare on it, and it's got none of the new members. And that's the one that's showing on the website at the moment. And I just thought I might point that out, and so it could be updated.
Yeah, no, good spot. Dawn, if you'd note that, and let's get that cleaned up, please, for the next meeting.
And I know there was an issue with the agenda as well. Nick was having problems with updating the system. I think that's all sorted now.
Okay.
But thank you.
Yep, thank you. So before we move on to item 1.3, can I just ask Nick, has Kelly arrived?
No, she hasn't, yes. And so if she arrives during this item, I will wait to let her in until once the item is over.
All right, perfect. So for the benefit of everyone else on the call, before we get into item 1.3, let me advise you that the CPCA has received a legal challenge to the procurement of the HE partner for the University of Peterborough. This is from PRC. Kelly Swingler is both a business board member and on the board of PRC. So to avoid any conflict of interest, the decision has been made that this item should be discussed in Kelly's absence. Therefore, we'll keep her in a holding pattern if she arrives. Nick will manage that for us on our behalf. And we're free now to discuss item 1.3. Dom, are you going to lead us through this, please? We lost Dom.
Sorry, I was on mute. Yes, so thank you. The first item under 1.3 is just to update members on actions and minutes from the last combined authority board that was held in March. They've been circulated. Majority of those action points and decisions were governance based. A lot of those were to tidy up governance arrangements for the organisations and appointments. There was Market Towns approved for Huntingdonshire, which was a great positive. And we had an update on the business board governance review process that is currently underway, which was a result of our governance workshop that was held with all the members back in January. So if it's okay unless there are any questions arising from those minutes, we can move on to the other two items in this agenda item.
Any questions, anyone? Okay, thanks, Tom.
Thank you. The second point, we've been asked to bring update presentations to the business board on combined authority key projects. This month, we outlined that we would have presentations on the A10 and the University of Peterborough. We have circulated those presentations ahead of the meeting for members to view. So if I could just first ask for any questions on the A10 presentation, because unfortunately Rob Jones can't join us today. but Roland Potter is head of transport, who's here to take any questions if there are anything from members. Thank you.
Thank you, Dom. Tina.
Can you explain a little bit about the time, the process, and how it works? I mean, I understand the presentation, but I don't really know where we are in any kind of process because I don't know the process.
Unfortunately, Roland is not on. I thought he was on. Tina, I will take that question back and I will circulate a response. Thank you.
So it's time scales and what the process is that we're.
Are there any other questions specific to the? Let's deal with them one at a time with the A10 upgrade.
I thought it was a good presentation, and it showed what the purpose of dualling and paying attention to the junctions was. What outcomes were expected. It was really clear and well presented.
Tina, feed that back to the team, Dom, please.
I will do. Thank you, Tina.
Okay. If there are no other questions on this point, let's move on to the University of Peterborough one.
Thank you. I think we've got a presentation. I think we're going to have a presentation made to us today. If we can load it on the screen. Nick, are we able to do that? Have you changed the settings so we can share the presentation?
The settings should be allowed to.
Yeah, I think I can do it now. Just bear with me.
Thank you, Emily.
Okay, can everybody see that okay?
Yep, that's fine.
Okay, perfect. So Kim, I will follow your lead when you scroll down.
Thank you very much, Emily. Thank you, Chair. This presentation was put together to sort of crystallise the outline business case and where we are with the creation of the new University of Peterborough. It was a presentation that was due to come to board in March, so we have had further developments, and I'm happy to give verbal updates of what has moved forward from this presentation. But Emily, if you can go to the first slide, that would be great. Thank you. This demonstrates why we are looking to create a new University of Peterborough. It clearly points out the fact that Peterborough is a cold spot for HE, and also that there are we're on the lower end of the higher level skills gap within the working population throughout England, and that drags down our productivity, and our GVA sort of sits around in Peterborough sort of at just under £25,000 per head, whereas obviously from that slide you can see that the upper end of the GVA in the area sits in and around Cambridge, and sort of, you know, to give you a bit more context, obviously GVA in London sits around £48,000 per head. So the university was a creation from evidence and research from the SPEAR. It is outlined in the local industrial strategy, and it's a key intervention for not only the CA, but also obviously the skills agenda across the county to drive up and fill the skills gaps. And all of this was obviously pre-COVID. So going forward, we envisage there to be a lot more, many more skills gaps, but actually in what sectors, that's what we need to find out. So, but this sets the theme as to why the CA are investing in creating a new university for Peterborough. Thanks, Emily. So last June, we commissioned a survey through Opportunity Peterborough, and they went out to talk to over 200 businesses. I know the merit, the top 10 businesses in Peterborough, and we wanted to know the types of curricula, the courses, the sectors that they wanted to see offered. The findings of the survey actually shape the shadow curriculum. And from this slide, you can sort of see it's quite small, but I guess if you've already had it circulated, that's good. The immediate need, the future need, and actually the priority in phase 1. So we had a return of 80 businesses out of the 200 that were surveyed, and every one of the top 10 businesses replied. Thank you. So that gave us the information that we could usefully use along with the SPEAR to actually start putting together a shadow curriculum. And what you see there is the sort of 3 faculties that we're going to concentrate on in phase 1, creates the shadow curriculum. The first one is business innovation and entrepreneurship. And obviously we are looking at different curriculum models. We're looking at blended learning, distance learning, on campus, off campus. So the first faculty is around business. Second one, creative digital arts and sciences. And the third faculty that came out really strong in the survey was agriculture, environment and sustainability. Through our conversations through the procurement with the HE partner, it has become really, really clear that a 4th faculty will be added to the curriculum model, and that is health and social care and education. So that's what we're looking to add through the negotiated procurement process, through conversations with the HE partner. Who are the target market? Obviously 18 to 24-year-olds, but pre-COVID this was around the 18 to 24-year-olds in the local demographic who wouldn't normally go to HE. And one of the big drivers in this HE project is widening participation and improving social mobility across Peterborough and Fenland. So it's really, really important that we can capture, market, promote to this sector of 18 to 24-year-olds who wouldn't ordinarily feel that HE was for them. Obviously the under and the unemployed, we were looking at outreach programs to support pathways into HE, and actually through the COVID-19, sort of the post-COVID-19, I think there will be a lot of training, retraining, upskilling and skilling. So I think that also sort of sits in that target segment. Obviously working with large corporates to design their own programs, to put together degree apprenticeships for them and bespoke training for their staff, as well as the first generation HE students. Again, that's all age across the whole demographic of Peterborough and Fenland. The target market of university students, whereby they are the first in their family to actually think, yeah, HE is for me and I'm going to do this. It's really worth pointing out here that this is a business-led, industry-led university, and it is absolutely key that the curriculum meets the demands of the businesses in Peterborough and Fenland and surrounding areas. Thank you, Emily. So what does it look like? It's going to go along Bishop's Road on the embankment, and that's a very, very sort of, it's a sketch, it's an illustration of the master plan for the university. Phases 1, 2 and phase 3 has 3 buildings attached to it. It's using the cathedral as sort of, you know, its vantage point. It's on the Warina car park in Bishop's Road, and phase 1 is a 4-acre site. The whole master plan is around 11.5 to 12 acres. Thank you, Emily. What does it look like? This is the view, this is the proposal, this is what we went to planning consultation on. And although through the procurement, the building has increased in size from 3,500 square metres to 5,300 square metres, it's just got a bit longer and a bit wider. So it's still a 3-storey rectangular building, with the most amazing views of the cathedral. Thank you, Emily. And that's sort of the view of the proposal from Arrival Square, walking down past Bishop's Road car park on the approach to the university. And the last slide are the next steps. As I've already said, we went to public consultation in February, and the planning application will be submitted in the summer and not spring. And we've pushed that out through the negotiations through procurement, where we have done a tremendous amount of work on increasing the building size. So obviously, in order to go to planning, we need all the details covered off. So as we're just nearing the end of the procurement, we're looking at putting that in September, along with the full business case that's going to the Skills Committee and the CA board in July. But we're still on track for enabling works to commence in autumn, probably around October, because we have made a pledge that we are working towards, and this is our milestone and our target, to open the doors by September 2022 to the first intake of students. And that concludes the presentation, Chair.
Thank you, Kim. Are there any questions here? A lot of this ground we've been over before, for sure, but I'm keen to just get a little bit of an insight into the legal challenge and understand that, so that the board are fully aware of what's going on there.
Of course.
Are there any questions?
Rebecca, a hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask him whether there were any plans to redo the survey, not necessarily now, but post-COVID, if you like, before we actually open, because things have changed dramatically, and we don't know quite how they will end up, you know, even a couple of months, let alone by the time the university opens, in terms of.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and I think there's a bigger piece there as well, Rebecca, around business engagement and how we work with, you know, the businesses in Peterborough and the Fens to ensure that you know, they are fundamental to shaping the curriculum, but actually rerunning the survey post-COVID, once everything has sort of, you know, sort of moved on, whenever that might be, would be incredibly useful. Absolutely. I think the fourth faculty coming in with the health and social care and the education will actually support rebuilding the NHS as well going forward. So yeah, definitely, Rebecca, excellent idea. Cool. Tina?
Any other questions?
Where are you with the provider? Because you seem to be quite close last time we spoke.
And Tina, yeah, we are very close to sort of nearing the end of the completion, almost ready to contract. And I think that's where we need to bring in the procurement and Heidi to discuss, you know, sort of where we've got to now and what the process is going forward, because we're almost there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, anxious to do that. Are there any other questions? Thank you, Kim. Is Heidi in a position to provide an explanation around the current challenge? Explain the process and what I think what the board would be interested to hear is, what do we think the likely outcome is, and what's the best case, worst case scenarios?
Okay, so just to give you a sort of overview update, we issued our standstill notification on the 7th of May, which went out to the 3 parties that had submitted initially in the procurement process back in September, to give everybody an update. We received a formal challenge letter from PRC on the 21st of May, detailing some concerns that they would like to discuss with us around the procurement and asking us not to enter into a contract until we've had those discussions, which of course we have agreed to. We have started the process of reviewing the procurement in fine detail, and we are doing that assisted by our external legal advisors, Pinsent & Mason. Pinsent & Mason, who have been on board with us through this procurement as our legal support. And at this time, it is still believed that the merit of PRC's claim is weak, and that its likelihood of successful challenge is low. But obviously, until we've had that confirmation back from the lawyers, we wouldn't want to sort of start giving any statistics, etc. With regards to likely outcome, unfortunately, these things are never cut and dry as soon as you involve legal things. My personal initial perception is we notified PRC back in October of the outcome of the selection questionnaire. And under the procurement rules, that starts a timescale ticking. It's been 5 months till we then heard from them again, and 7 months since we obviously notified them they'd been unsuccessful. So we're hopeful that the best case scenario is that our lawyers are able to squash their concerns and evidence that our process is robust and we've done everything that we should do. Worst case scenario, they could seek an injunction against us from awarding the contract, and we would have to re-procure. That's the absolute worst case scenario. And I think that sort of covers off from a procurement perspective where I think we are at the moment. We're still aiming to hit the key project dates. We've got some time before we're due to award the contract in our programme, so we're still optimistic we can achieve those too.
Okay. How quickly will we know?
So we're working to some quite tight timescales. They've sent in their second letter, which we received yesterday. We are already working on a response to that with the lawyers, which I'd like to see turned around in the next 2 to 3 days. As I'm sure you can appreciate, it takes quite a bit of work addressing multiple points in a letter. We will then have to wait for them to respond. But if they're as mean to themselves as they are to us, they're giving us 48 hours each time to turn things around. So we're hoping that certainly within 2 weeks into June, we will know. That's what we're aiming for anyway. And that's the timetable that their lawyers actually set out to us to work to. So we're hopeful that they'll stick to their own timetable.
Yeah. Okay. Have any of the board members got any questions around that particular issue?
Sorry, why were they counted out? Because of the timing, or was the bid just not up to scratch?
So the submission that they made was at the initial stage, which is a standard selection questionnaire. And unfortunately, within that, they failed to demonstrate something really critical to the contract.
Okay. So it isn't just the timing as well, because it seemed like they lagged behind anyway.
Yeah, usually there are timescales you have to respond in. For some reason, they haven't done that. I can't say why.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions?
I just have a quick one, Austin. So thank you, Heidi. I'm just curious, is this the first time that a lawsuit of this nature has been raised with the CPCA? Or does this happen fairly frequently? I'm just trying to understand, is this a relatively rare occurrence, or is it something that happens periodically?
I've been in public procurement for 11 years now, and it's the first time I've ever received one. So yeah, they're not common.
Thank you.
All righty. If there are no other questions, thank you very much for the update.
I think
Yeah.
James has got one.
James has got a question.
James?
Thank you, Chairman. It's not a question, it's more of a statement, really. I mean, the University of Peterborough has been stagnant, standstill, going nowhere really for over 20 years. And Combined Authority's come in, and within 3 years, we've got plans on the table to begin work in October, funded first phase, looking to fund the second phase to deliver what Peterborough has always wanted. We've put considerable amount of study into what kind of university and the issues surrounding Peterborough. And I just think this is just tremendously disappointing that Peterborough Regional College has taken this route. And I think I'm right in saying there's never been an example where a regional college it's delivered at university. And that's the reason one of the reasons why we've taken the work that we've done, we've taken it seriously. Every confidence in the team who have done exceptional work to see off this challenge. But I just think it's so disappointing for Peterborough when it's so close to work beginning on its university that this has happened. And I just hope that it will not hold the scheme up.
Thank you, James. Let's hope not. I see John's hands up. John Hill.
Yes, thank you, Chair. It's in response to Rebecca's question earlier on, actually, about the impact of COVID. I've just been waiting in the wings for the answer. Just want to reassure you, we're looking at the impact of COVID in two ways. The CPCA, as you will see in item 3.1, I think, is about to invest a total of 250k in re-looking at the skills strategy and the SPEAR in terms of the socio-economic and skills impacts of COVID. So basically recalibrating the need. So that's a broader piece of work. ARU, who Andy Neely and Al interviewed on Monday last week, are going to be asked to do much more detailed work on the addressable market geographically and in terms of socioeconomics and place and their business development plans to capture that addressable market. So we are looking at the impacts of COVID. We very much realise that whatever the university is won't be what we originally thought it would be 3 or 4 months ago. And we're working half with our own resources on the total market and half with putting ARU through their paces and demonstrating to us they really understand the market and they've got a really good plan to develop that market and capture those students. But they've got a lot of work to do to convince us of that at the moment, but they will be asked to do that. I'm sure they'll rise to the challenge.
Thank you, John. All right, in an attempt to move on from this, under this agenda item, there are 4 items to note. So I'm not going to go around the table on this. I'll assume we're all noting that unless anyone has any other points they'd like to raise. We've captured the issue of the timeline on the A10 upgrade, and I think we're comforted by comments around the post-COVID survey and revisiting the shape of it as we enter a somewhat new world. Let me move us on to item 1.4, please. The update on the business board and the wider combined authority response to COVID-19. The floor is yours, John.
Thank you, Chair. You'll have all read the paper, and much of it we've gone through before, so I'm not going to go through huge amounts of detail, simply to say that we've got 3 levels of response. We've got a short-term response around business advice through the Growth Hub, as one-to-one, as multi-topic business support that we've contracted out to a company called V4, and also through specific expertise which we signpost into accountants, lawyers, all sorts of organisations from a database we run. You will of course know that we've run a £5.9 million worth of COVID support grants. And over something like a 3 or 4 week period, we've gone from nothing to completely allocating all that money to companies and created a high volume of protected jobs and even around 250 of created new jobs. The work we've done more recently is to develop through the Economic Recovery Subgroup a longer term strategy for recovery, and that is being baked into the procurement for the business support, or the business growth service, I should say. We are part now of a local recovery forum as the chair of the Economic Recovery Subgroup. The Mayor chairs a city centre exit strategy group which sat this morning and sits weekly to look at opening high streets which is moving forward after perhaps a slow start, is moving forward exceptionally well now. I think the Mayor would agree. We had a really good meeting this morning. The Mayor also chairs his COVID forum, which is a much more wide-ranging group looking at COVID recovery. And I'm also, as an officer, on the Oxcam Economic Recovery Group and the M9 Mayoral Combined Authorities Economic Recovery Group, to make sure that we understand what the LEPs across the Oxcam and what the other mayoral combined authorities are doing, and that we're doing at least as much and sharing in best practice. Government are right now very interested in gaining feedback from us, LEPs and other combined authorities, to create a recovery strategy. It's thought that sometime within the next 2, possibly 3 weeks, they'll have created the bones of a recovery strategy to start formulating longer term actions. We're feeding into that. We've done that through 2 select committee groups, and I'm writing at Chair's request a paper that on Friday that will go in through BEIS and the local government unit through Kate there. The other things that merit noting are the wider response from the combined authority, particularly around housing development, where we're looking at potentially a package of measures for borrowers within the 40 million revolving fund we've got that may provide interest-free repayment holidays whilst the construction industry is disrupted, and extensions of the duration of loans to enable developers to cope with the additional disruption and uncertainty of housing demand. Also work very much that the Mayor has led around transport that is affected by up to 90% reduction in demand at present. And the Mayor has led calls for support to the bus in particular sector, and we estimate that Cambridgeshire and Peterborough will receive around £5 million over the next 12 weeks in funding for buses that the Mayor has been instrumental in. So that's pretty much a summary of what's going on. Much of it you already knew, but I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you, John. Awful lot in there. Good report. Thank you. Questions? I can't see any hands up. Shout. Okay, thank you. There are a number of items there to note. Items A through I. No decisions to be made. I'd just like to add just one point from myself. I attended a roundtable meeting in government's attempt to capture more and more feedback from people within the business community with Minister Simon Clarke. And in his opening speech, he referred to and congratulated the combined authority on the COVID-19 Capital Grant Fund for both its impact and the creativity and innovation that had been extended in getting that in place in very, very short order, which I think is testimony to the officers and to Mayor James Palmer as well as the original architects and drivers behind that. Whilst we supported it, that's obviously been well received and will form part of, I think, the paper that John's going to put together. John.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that, Chair. I'd forgotten that part of it. And I was reviewing emails this morning and over the weekend, and it looks like government will be replicating pretty much exactly what we'd created as the COVID-19 Capital Grant with ERDF funding that they're going to take out of the National Reserve Fund. A sort of bittersweet for us, that one, because emulation and is the best form of flattery. but on the downside, the National Reserve Fund is something we're looking at for phase 2 of the university project. So we don't want them to take too much out of that. So there's not enough left for the university research centre. But yeah, it looks as if they're going to launch something that is a very close copy of what we did.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, John. Any other questions or comments? I'm going to accept the fact that we've noted items A through I, as there are no decisions.
I think Al was looking to say something there. Sorry, Austin.
Sorry, Al.
That's all right, Austin. I just put my hand up slightly earlier. I just wanted to share, having been on the combined COVID mayoral forum, I wanted to just share how positive I think that process has been. It has kind of fostered a lot of collaboration. It's been really aligned with what James has been saying, but also weeks down the line, we've also seen that replicate with some of the government changes and communications coming out. So I think seeing that kind of collaboration and feedback's been really positive.
Brilliant. Thank you. Okay, let me move us on to item 2.1 then, please. Business Board Strategic Funds Update. Vanessa will present the report, I believe.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. I'll be relatively brief because hopefully it's not going to be too complicated, as you've all seen the report. The figures that we have presented are to the end of March, so technically a full year. They're not finalised as the auditors actually started work today. We're having our accounts audited early, so there will be some minor changes, but these will be taken to the CA board in next week sometime. The standard approach, which I would like to talk to you about with regards to underspend, is that unless it is ring-fenced funding or it's been committed, underspend tends to be taken back into the CA board central pot. One of the things that we are going to be looking at doing for some potential items within the business board remit is that the central funding is being used for COVID-19 related activities, which you are all aware of at the moment. So there may be some instances where some funding is not rolled over, but it will be used to go towards COVID-19 expenditure. There's really only a few items on there that have got any impacts on yourselves. The LGF funding is automatically carried over as it is ring fenced, so there is no worries on that one. I also show to you at the bottom of the report the revenue funding for the skills side of the Business and Skills Committee. So this is something we put together earlier in the year, and my question really for this is, do you still want to see the skills information? Is it something that you want to know about, or is it something that, as it's not under your direct control, that is not something that you wish to see in future? Other than that, I don't really have a lot to present on this.
Thank you, Vanessa. Any questions, any particular views on the exposure of the skills expenditure? Andy.
Thanks, Austin. Apologies for earlier and disappearing. And can I also register my potential conflict with the growth fund? I've got cut off as we were about to do that. But on this paper particularly, page 76, it would be helpful just to get a sense of the outturns and why there is so much variation on some of them. So on the EU exit funding, 141 versus 90, and on the LEP capacity, LEP capacity, 132 versus 320. I mean, there's some really big variations to what was originally budgeted, which I don't think we've discussed particularly at the board before. So it would be helpful to understand why those variations came, and then think about a process for making sure we talk about them earlier on rather than at outturn point. Yes, certainly. I've tried to give explanations within the narrative, but obviously the EU exit funding, we pay in advance for V4 services, and the way the contract was procured originally, this was how it worked out, and I don't think we were quite aware of exactly how that would fall within the year. The LEP capacity funding, some of it was because of what came about in the January
figures when we agreed to transfer some of the funding for the business board remuneration because of the downturn in the enterprise zones. Because that was a late change of expenditure, it left a hole there, and rather than do a knee-jerk reaction and let's just go and spend some money because we have to spend the money before outturn, when I discussed with John, we agreed to sort of wait to put it to a good use rather than an automatic use, just to spend the funding.
Yeah.
I hope that gives you some indication of that.
Yeah, I mean, it's helpful. It's really it's more a question of, I guess, for us as a board, how we make sure that we're on an ongoing basis looking at how we're doing against the budget we've got each year and thinking about should we be ratcheting up some stuff or dialing down some bits on it. And we're not having that conversation explicitly. John's waving, Austin. I think want to reply.
Yeah. So the big three actually are down to, well, two of them are down to COVID, and one of them is down to a BEIS large allocation that was that we treated as a longer term budget. The EU exit funding was quite simply given to us as 8 or 90k actually, and then we got another 180k on top. So we started the year with 90. And then we got it extended because COVID got worse and we got more money. So it isn't that we sort of didn't have plans to spend it. We just got given more money later, which is why we've got the carry forward. And as you see, we've significantly spent most of it. Growth Hub, same thing. We started off with 246 and we had 92 here in the discretionary part of that. And then we got paid a load more money, 295k or 290k, due to COVID response. So those two were to do with COVID and getting a dividend, a windfall of money partway through the year. LEP capacity funding was a very large amount of money, started off at 400k, that we treated as a longer term budget to develop the LEP functionality, and haven't had a budget, haven't had a plan to spend all that money in a single year. We've had a plan to develop the LEP, but then knew we would roll some of that over. So that sort of explains the big variances on those three. One of the variances is we didn't have a plan to spend 320k on LEP capacity funding.
All right, thanks for that clarification, John.
Could I just clarify on the timings in response to Andy? This is only the third time this report has been brought to you, and I think the first one was in January. So it's not, this is something that will be starting from this financial year, from April onwards, will be brought to you much more often, and you'll be able to see it all the way through the year. So it's the fact that this was only introduced at the back end of the year that you've not had these updates previously.
I think that would be really helpful to see it regularly.
And just quickly for me, in terms of just adding to what Vanessa was saying about the underspend, where there are ring-fenced budgets like the LEP capacity funding and EU exit funding, those will be rolled forward because we have no option to spend them on anything else. So none of those budgets will be lost due to under or overspend. Sorry, my camera's here, not here. I'll stop looking to my left. And in terms of better reporting to facilitate your control of the budgets, to the Combined Authority Board, we have a materiality threshold, which when there's a change in outturn forecast beyond a certain level, we then have to give more detail in an appendix. Is that potentially something you'd like? And what sort of level do you think, having a look at these as an example, might be reasonable?
That threshold's on a percentage basis, is it?
There's a percentage and an absolute value.
Anyone have any firm views on that?
If not, we can come back with our idea for in the next one. Sorry, Andy, I think I've cut across.
Yeah, no. What are the thresholds you use for the Combined Authority Board, right?
For the corporate budgets, not the corporate budgets, the operational budgets, because they're not reported to an executive committee, it's £100,000. And for the project-based revenue budgets, it's 250. For the capital, it's 500,000, and those are all roughly 2% of the gross. Well, 250 and 500 are 2% of the gross budgets for the year.
Okay. I mean, I think putting some, it probably given the numbers from here, a percentage movement would be a helpful trigger just to get a bit more detail. I mean, clearly, when there are windfalls that come in or things that happen during the course of the year, it makes it then it can be quite a quick note. But it's more if there are things where we think we were planning to get something done, we won't got round to it, and that causes a shortfall. They're the ones that we should be watching carefully.
I mean, I'm more than happy to create this report however you want to see it. So, you know, if anybody wants to sort of combine through Austin or through Dom and pass that information on, we're more than willing to devise a report that suits your needs.
Okay. Can I suggest we take an action for you guys to give us an Aunt Sally of what do you think would be sensible based on, you know, what would be a sensible level of triggers on a percentage basis, maybe, to drive out not only monthly or quarterly reporting of the actual figures, but to create a narrative to explain a movement. I think that would be eminently sensible.
So the standard we've got for the CA board, as I say, is about 2% of the gross budget. Well, that's for the overall budget rather than a line-by-line basis, on the basis that we just want to look at material things. Given the low number of budget lines for the business board, it's probably more appropriate for us to take it on a line-by-line basis and say 5%, for example, of the original budget for the year.
But let's take that as a starting point then, Rob, and then if as time goes by that proves not to capture an issue, we'll revisit it.
Sounds very sensible.
John?
It's probably worth repitching that 320 LEP capacity fund. We show it as a 1920 budget, but it's not really. It's an amount of money of 400 grand that was given to us when the LEP review was done for improving your LEP. We never intended spending it all in 1 year. In fact, we were given it in the last previous year. So this is a carryover already. So I think probably what we need to do is not show really large sort of community chest type budgets as annual there. I think we need to show how much we would probably expect to spend of that budget over this current year and roll the next forward, because to a certain extent we hold that as a budget to develop things as they come at us, to develop the capacity of the left.
I mean, I think in response to the question about what would be useful, colleagues have other views, I'm sure, but my sense is it'd be really helpful just to see, let's say over the next 3 years, what we think the funding is that's available to the LEP now, what has already been committed, and therefore what the balance is, and of the money that's been committed, what's actually been spent in accordance with the profile that we thought it was going to get spent with. And then we get some sense of the overall picture, and you can start to have some slightly longer term conversations about what happens over the next 2 to 3. And if that was on a rolling basis, you could always be having a kind of ongoing conversation, and we'll see where the funding for the business board starts to fall off a cliff, and therefore we should be worrying about putting more pressure on the government, and we'll see where we should be focusing more on what we can be doing for the local economy.
All right. You're on mute, Vanessa. So we've lost your voice, Vanessa. Are you on mute? No.
Tina's waving as well.
Yeah, but it's the same problem I have. You get your same port, your speakers in.
Right.
I wanted to put a bit more
Vanessa.
Yes.
Go on, Tina.
I just wanted to monitor not there in the budget and then suddenly appear. I have a feeling that I ought to remember when that happened, but I don't remember. So it'd be good to have that explained.
Sorry, I lost the beginning of the question. Would you mind repeating the first part, Tina?
Yes, it's the growth of salaries.
Okay.
A big change, and I said I'm sure I should remember when that happened, but not to have budgeted it and then to find it in this, it's a bit odd, but good to know when that happened.
So that's a reporting anomaly, which is entirely my fault, I'd say. The staffing budget for the combined authority is held corporately, presided over by John Hill, the chief exec, and that was a decision made at the beginning of the 1920 financial year. So the project budgets were originally written net of salaries, which is where the 90.9k came from. At the end of year, we then have recharged those salaries into those cost centres within our finance system, so we can report to government and show we've actually spent the 246k that you gave us. So this is effectively a reporting artifact. We have addressed that for 2021, however, because we've now got the gross staffing figure at the top of the medium-term financial plan and budget, then a recharge specifically stated, and then the gross budget again in the project line. So going forward, you'll have that full 246 figure from the beginning of the year, and you'll see the staffing costs coming through, rather than what's happened here of seeing 90k and then suddenly being hit by the staffing costs with no budget to match it.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, are there any more comments or questions? Okay, so just to move on, we're noting this with, I think, the following qualifications: that we would like to see more frequent reporting. We would like to see some thresholds at 5% on a line-by-line basis to cause a narrative to be brought back to the board to explain the movements, and that we'd like to understand on a rolling basis those values that spread over multiple years and what is being consumed on a year-to-date or period-to-date basis over the length of that funding.
Okay.
Any other comments? Okay, let's leave that at that. Let's move on to 2.2, Local Growth Fund Programme Management. Louisa. Thank you, Vanessa. Thank you very much indeed.
Good afternoon, Chair. I am here on behalf of Steve. And Steve's walked me through his paper and has obviously made copious notes for me to share with yourselves. The first point of note within the paper is point 2, where we received information from BEIS and MCHLG that they would be withholding the final third of our funding post completing a review in July to September time to look at how spend is going. We've been assured that this should not stop us from entering into contract with organisations, but we are very keen that when we do, we are clear that spend has to be maintained on track and that spend has to be completed by the 31st of March 2021 on all projects. So that is where we are in terms of our entering into contracts and ensuring that where we do, and when we do, that there is clear sight of the March 2021 deadline for spend. What we also had was they have deferred the final quarterly return for 2019-20. We don't have to submit that until September, we've made the decision that we actually will submit a return, should be completed by the end of this week and submitted by the end of this week. So our return will be a week later than it should be in terms of the normal programme, but 2 months earlier than required by BEIS. We feel that this will put us in a much better position and will ensure that BEIS are seeing our spend washing through and our movement in terms of our projects, bearing in mind how long we had on a bit of a hold. So we felt that that was a really sort of positive way forwards, and it was quite well received by the team at MCHLG. There is 35, so further on, scrutinising of projects. I am making an assumption that everybody has read the paper, sorry, by flying through. There is discussion around the sort of defrayment of payments and moving through of funding and ensuring that projects are spending. And we're really vigilant in terms of that now. Not that we weren't previously, but more so now, having had the update from MCHLG in terms of holding back that final third. So we are very determined with our projects that spend has to be maintained and spend has to be on track. So all projects that have signed contracts have resubmitted programmes of spend, which we'll be monitoring them against. I mean, we continue to talk to BEIS on a sort of weekly basis in terms of the projects. We've asked BEIS around the 31st of March deadline, is there any wiggle room? Are we able to extend any of our projects? The clear response is 31st of March, that's your end date. And so that is where we are aiming for, but we are maintaining our contact with BEIS in order to assure them that whilst we've asked about a delay and potential extension of deadlines, we're absolutely committed to that completion date for all projects. Update on all of the projects. We do actually have one extra project in contract now, which is the TWI contract that went into contract last week. And we've a number of other projects that are at final contract. So we have our Illumina Accelerator project that is, the final documents have been issued. We are doing a final read through and those will be shared with our monitoring. We expect those to be, that project to be signed up to fairly quickly because they have a number of subsequent startups that they want to support who are dealing with some of the COVID initiatives. We have Start Coden, which is also one of the projects that we're on to. But we're working our way through our projects to ensure that they're all signed up as quickly as possible. The capital, the Agritech scheme has been a little bit on hold because Martin has been very, very busy on the capital growth grant scheme. That is fully allocated now, and Martin now has a number of applications that he's pushing through the Agritech scheme as well. So he's doing a bit of juggling at the moment, bless him. There are 3 projects in delivery that will now not, 3.3 we're on now, will now not be taking their full allocation of funds, which has resulted in a 3.8 million. It was 3.8 million, is now 4.5 million. This is due to a underspend or a potential underspend on the Wisbech project. We have returned funds from a project, the water project that went into receivership. We have one project, U&I, which was the container village, which is showing in the table above 3.3. That is no longer going ahead due to COVID. They've not been able to secure planning, etc. And so felt it was prudent to inform us that they wouldn't be able to spend those funds within the timescales that we had given them. But they will be potentially reapplying for funding further down the line once we get additional funds, or if there are additional funds available. There is also, in terms of the 4.5 million, there is 2 million that has come from a current project that is now being funded through the recycled funds. So in total, there is now 4.5 million, which we are looking to allocate in the next 6 to 8 weeks. Total project expenditure is from our most recent BEIS return, which would be our Q3 return. At that point, we were showing 79.56 million spend. There's been additional spend, obviously, in the last quarter, which will go through to the BEIS, and we'll be able to report that final end of year figure to yourselves at the next business board. Completed, I have said. I'm working my way through Steve's notes. We include the project risk register for your information. The project risk register is based on our return, our third quarter return, and obviously doesn't reflect some of the information we now have and the updates we now have for projects that are no longer going ahead or potentially have been delayed as a result of COVID. So the next risk register update will be more reflective of where we absolutely are right now. The capital grants program, obviously it was incredibly well received. There was a balance of 2.2 million going into the first phase of the capital grant scheme, and a further 3 million from LGF was identified, all of which has now been allocated and has been really well received by companies across the region. I know that Martin is continuing to monitor that spend and monitor those applications. I think he has 4 that he is making a final decision on, not having enough funds for all 4 of them. The Agritech scheme I've updated you on, in terms of there is a renewed emphasis on the scheme, and Martin will be going out again in the near future to publicise. There is still some spend within that project, so Martin is going to be identifying how much is left and where they go. I think he's going to be working with Emily in terms of getting the publicity around that. The next item in Steve's report is number 7, which is around the LGF support for the Innovation Fund within the Agile to Education budget. Now, my understanding is, and I am hoping, that Francis is going to walk you through what the proposal is around that move of funds. What we're looking at is allocating the funds that were returned from water, which was approximately 300,000, to support the Innovation Fund within AEB. So is Francis there? Or are you doing it, Fiona?
Yeah, a lot of stuff. In what can we ask questions now of what's already happened?
Yeah,
before we-
absolutely. Yeah.
Because I got lost. I was a little bit lost at 2.4. So, if I've understood correctly, if you look at 2.4, it says all of this business with the Bays deciding that we definitely have to spend that money by the 31st of March, and effectively they'll be coming along in September to check on where we are and how the spending is going. It says 2.4 says this shouldn't impact our willingness to contract. 2.42, I found the English a bit difficult. What is it trying to say that can contract, and once we've contracted, Bays will. I didn't understand the bit about rephasing of agreed payments, and the bit that says the non-payment of a grant instalment not defrayed means that if a grant holder hasn't spent the money and we pay them, that's allowed for within the contract between the combined authority and the grant holder, or is this between us and Bays?
As far as I'm aware, this is between us and Bays. So if we have committed to and have contracted to make those grant payments and they fall within the 31st of March end date, then those payments will all be honoured and there is no issue in terms of that third that is being withheld by Bays. Oh, John's wafting.
It says that said, non-payment of a grant instalment not defrayed is indeed allowed for within the contract. So they can.
I wrote that, which is why it probably makes no sense at all. It's all double negatives. What I'm desperately trying to say is, hey, look, if we've got a contract with somebody and they don't defray by the 31st of March, we don't have to pay them anyway, because our contract says we only pay anything defrayed up to the 31st of March. So if Bays were not to pay us, it doesn't matter to us in that we wouldn't have paid the claimant anyway, because we will only pay things if they're defrayed before the 31st of March. What this section is about actually is a public sector contracting clause, which I discovered, in that public agencies aren't allowed to enter into contracts unless they have absolutely guaranteed funds to pay the contract. What Bays have said is we might withhold 30%, 33% of your final payment. So lots of people in the public sector ran around saying, we can't contract them because you won't guarantee that you will give us the funds. And the point I'm trying to make there is we would never pay those funds if they didn't defray in time anyway. So it sort of becomes a zero-sum game.
Thanks, John.
Are there any more questions? Oh, I like that. I like the silence. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Chair.
Andy's waving, actually. I'm sorry.
Oh, is Andy waving? Oh, no, well, I can't see him waving, therefore he's not.
Sorry.
Go on, Andy.
Depends which screen you're on, one or two. So, quick question, which might need a longer answer. But if I read this correctly, 3.2 says we've allocated 139.9 million of the 146.7 million that we have in total. And then a bit later, 3.4 says that 79.56 million has actually been spent and paid out. So basically, we've paid out about 80 million of a total budget of about 146 million, just shy of that. And although we've then allocated up to 139.9, what I'm struggling to get is a really good sense of how confident we are of the gap between the 80 odd million and the 140 million that we've actually allocated. We really think we're going to spend by the 31st of March. And so some way of bringing that together into a single table and saying, you know, that's been allocated, but we reckon it's high risk still because we've got a bunch of things that we agreed a couple of months ago, 3 months ago, under the LGF fund, which are still pre-contract, as you've talked about. So time is ticking, and clearly with COVID, there's all sorts of concerns about this. So it'd be really helpful for the board, I would have thought, to get an overall figure of total budget, total allocated, actual spend, and of the stuff that we haven't yet spent but we have allocated, how confident are we at an aggregate level it's really going to go, so we know where we are.
We certainly can produce that if you want that in a table format that we can share across. In terms of where we are with that, the majority of our projects obviously were forecast to spend in the final year. Some have already spent. For example, one of the projects started in January and has finished with a spend of 1.7 million. So where we are in contract, we're absolutely certain that they are going to be delivering by the 31st. Those that we are still entering into, where we still are not in contract, we are being very clear that there are these time frames in place, and they have to guarantee that they will be spending by the 31st of March 2021. If they can't guarantee that, then we are looking at, well, where do we go and what do we do, and what's our backup plan here, and what's our plan B. But we always knew we were going to be spending the majority of this fund in the final year of the fund, due to the fact that we were on hold for such a long time. So that we've always known we were going to be pushed to the limit on it, but now we're even more pushed to the limit on it. And we certainly I can provide the table, as you suggest, with what we've got left to contract into, what there's left to spend on projects, and those that we feel are probably a slightly higher risk than others. John's waving.
Yes, let me just bring John in for a minute, Louisa.
So it probably isn't as clear as it could be in the narrative, but it's as straightforward as this. We've been pressurising existing contractors anyway for something like 3 to 4 months. We have now, within the last month, pressurised them to a much greater level. That has actually resulted not in WATA, because they went bump, so that's 320 that would have happened anyway. But the container village actually came and said, look, we can't do this 700k, because we were pressurising them to justify that they really could. Similarly, on Wisbeach Access, we've been working with those guys to really force them into a position of saying, if you can't guarantee you can spend this, we really want to get that money back. So that's another big lump of money. And I can tell you actually something that has happened since this was written. We've got another project where we are going into contract and we are becoming more aggressive. And rather than say, you've got to give us a guarantee of spend, we're asking them to justify that they can spend. And if we're not satisfied they can spend, we simply won't go into that contract. And there is in fact one contract for 3 million with the College of West Anglia for Wisbeach FE College, that I do not think we will within a week agree to sign that contract, because they have not provided enough reassurance and evidence that they can spend by 31st of March. So the simple answer is either all the risky projects have already folded, as it were, or said they can't do it, with the exception of one that is the remaining risk that we suspect won't be able to spend. But we can put all that into a table, but it's basically one project now.
That's really helpful, John. Thank you. I mean, I think from the board's perspective, what would be really unfortunate is to find in December that we had 30 million quid that suddenly reappeared and hadn't been allocated, and it was too late to allocate, and Bayes went, oh, well, we'll just scoop all that back up again.
Yeah, in fact, it's worse. The result of that review in September from Bayes will take back anything we can't demonstrate we can defray. which is why I'm putting the team under so much pressure to ensure that we can defray, because anything we don't, we lose. It goes straight back to Bays, and that would be terrible.
John, we had a number of projects that didn't make the cut that are still in the hopper, and that was our comfort blanket, that there were a number of things that could quickly hoover up the any underspent funds here. The challenge is time, isn't it? That we're running out of time, and consequently some of those opportunities in the hopper might themselves not even be executable if it's another 2 months before we can get them moving. Is there any value in bringing those to the table to get them approved contingent upon funding coming available on a prioritised basis, so that you've got a mandate to run with them without having to go through the machinations?
I don't think we'll need to do that. Appendix E gives you our strategy for exactly what you've raised there. We currently, if you add up the Wisbech Access, the Illumina project that we're using from Growing Places funds, the WATA and the SciTech village, you get 7.52 million that is going to come back. To actually question, what's our strategy for allocating it and getting it spent for 31st of March? And Appendix E goes through this, but simply put, it's basically 7.52 minus 3 million of the COVID grant we've already done. So that's done. Minus the adult education budget, which is in this innovation fund, which is 320k, which is in this paper to approve. That leaves you with 4.2 left. Then we've got the CAM Metro, that is like the growth company, is an equity investment. So that will be coming to you in the July board meeting, and the act of investing our equity in there defrays it instantly. So we're confident that that 1 million will be defrayed in time because it's an equity investment. Then there's Cambridge Regional College that is asking for 3 million, and we are taking them through their paces in terms of whether we'd want to fund that. Is it good quality in terms of a proposal, and can they spend it? We think they can, and that will use up the 7.5. What we've still got is Peterborough Station Quarter at 2 million in the back pocket, which is also a equity investment that is defrayable virtually immediately. So the answer is we do have enough in the pipeline. We do expect to be bringing it to you in July, and we do expect to be able to defray it by the 31st of March. And we've been trying to balance pulling back this money with working with this pipeline to make sure we can do this balancing trick.
Got it. But the fact that these can be defrayed instantly is very helpful, isn't it?
Very attractive.
Yeah. Okay. Understood. Thank you. Louisa, I think we were there or thereabouts in terms of all of the parts here. Does anyone else?
In terms of the LGF, I think we were moving forward to. I think we were hoping. Well, certainly I was hoping that there'd be Francis or Fiona to discuss the AEB element of the paper.
I can do that if you'd like, Chair.
Fine.
Yes, please, John. I think that's fairly straightforward. It's been discussed before.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been discussed before. The West Anglia Training Academy, or the College of West Anglia, going bust, brings back 320k. We're simply suggesting that we put 320k of the LGF, quite like the COVID grant and quite like the Agritech grant. We actually put that across into this AEB Innovation Fund, and it is administered on an application by application basis, just like the COVID grant, just like Agritech. And it would be used for particularly COVID type stuff for FE colleges, particularly around hardware and software for distance learning, for colleges to make this leap from face-to-face learning to distance learning. So it's an allocation of money from the LGF into this fund to be sub-allocated like a little sub-scheme, just as we did with COVID grant and Agritech.
Perfect, thanks, John. Anyone, any quick questions on that? That is a recommendation. Okay.
Can I just add, Chair, sorry, it's Fiona here. I just want to add that when we originally were doing this, about the Adult Education Innovation Fund. However, as we've realised as this period has gone on for, oh, can you hear me okay now? Can you hear me okay? No? Is that better?
Give it one more shot.
I'm just saying that we have strengthened the Innovation Fund from the LGF, from WATA, to be extended into the wider FE sector because apprenticeships has been considerably disrupted. And the AEB grant providers are being given the assurity for next year to have that grant funding. However, apprenticeships and the wider sector isn't been given that extra. So when an FE college comes to us for help, they don't just exclude the other parts of the FE sector, they include it all. So that's why I'm working with Francis on the AEB team to make sure that we have the eligibility criteria right for the whole sector and not just one part.
Thank you for that. Okay, to move us on, we've got 3 items which we've noted, A, B and D, with a request that we construct a table to better understand the moving parts with the various projects and the ones that might or might not get over the line. And item C is a recommendation to the Combined Authority to approve the allocation of £320,000 of return local growth funding to the new AE Budget Innovation Fund. I'm going to take it that unless anyone shouts now, that we're unanimously in support of that. Anyone? Okay, then we'll note the 3 items and take the recommendation forward. Thank you,
very
Louise.
much, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, let's move on to 2.3, the IMET investment update and options and recommendations. I haven't seen Kelly during the meeting. Nick?
No, I'm sorry, Chair. She's not been able to join.
Okay. Kelly had previously declared an interest here, so on the basis that she's absent, we'll press on. John, could you quickly present the IMET investment report, please?
I will, Chair, and I will endeavour to be quick. So, most of you, probably all of you, will know about the IMET Centre and have seen it when you visited Alconbury. It's a subject of GCGP investment of £10.5 million in 2016-17. This paper introduces an opportunity to recycle and recover that asset. We are not asking for any decisions. We're just putting in front of you a number of pieces of information and options for you to note and to delegate to myself and the legal team at the CPCA to explore the options for recovery of this asset and reuse of the asset. This was a very generous 100% grant to Huntingdon Regional College to create IMET. That means that Huntingdon Regional College will have owned the building. We should note that Urban and Civic still own the land underneath, or at least they have a 500k value on the land underneath, and a clause by which that they can claim back that underlying value on the land. It's worth also noting that the original outcomes were very, very low, 12 jobs and 360 apprenticeships for 10.5 million, which are very low in comparison to the sorts of investments we've been making recently at the CPCA. But also what it probably means, which I'll come back to later, is that if we put the current incumbents under pressure, they may well harden their attitude and attempt to deliver the outcomes by asking for more time, because the outcomes aren't hugely onerous. although given to Huntingdon Regional College, this grant quickly novated within the year to Cambridge Regional College, as Cambridge Regional College acquired a failing Huntingdon Regional College. As you probably know, IMET in the MET is Materials Engineering and Technology. And the concept was that these enterprise zone would grow and the catchment area between South Peterborough and sort of North Cambridge would be enough to make a viable business. Neither the enterprise zone grew, nor did that catchment area produce enough students, nor did it in the end transpire that the students were willing to travel from Huntingdon itself. A combination of these factors has meant that the business has become unviable. The business is actually a joint venture, which complicates things even further, between Peterborough Regional College and Cambridge Regional College, and they've agreed to wind the company up. Our options for recovery are dealt within one appendix, which I'm going to canter you through. There are options for reusing those funding, which I'll also take you through. And there's also an issue, which I'll take you through now, of what do we do about Cambridge Regional College and their current proposal to the Local Growth Fund. Basically, CRC are indeed the current owner, possibly by default, but nonetheless they are. And the legal entity against which we would instigate any actions to recover the funds. Separately, they also happen to have a proposal to LGF for a project on their main site and a Huntingdon site. So the question is raised, and I'd like to give you some guidance on. Can we simply say, well, we're not going to consider your proposal because you've got a failed project on the books? And the answer is the local assurance framework requires us to treat as separate any clawback issues and any new proposal issues, which isn't entirely unreasonable. And that any proposal from CRC, their current proposal, shouldn't be prejudiced against and should be evaluated separately and objectively to the established independent evaluators and the Entrepreneurs Assessment Panel. So that's just a footnote to say we really must treat the two issues as separate. If I can take you through Appendix 3 in terms of our the risks of and implications of legal recovery of funds. Basically, Clause 18 does give us, of course, the right to reclaim the grant if we believe that the project can't be satisfactorily completed. That really means either spend, not relevant in this case, or the production of the outcomes, 360 apprenticeships. However, this is complicated by a number of factors. Number one, there isn't any clear ownership of cause of breach. The route to clawback of the funding is complicated by the collapse of the original grant applicant, HRC, and their subsequent merger with CRC, Cambridge Regional College. The subsequent delivery of IMET was agreed by the old LEP to be through the creation of a joint venture between Peterborough College and CRC. And the operating company for IMET, and that became the operating company for IMET, effectively forming the delivery vehicle. So the first complication here is CRC are the asset owner because the grant was novated to them. But the cause of default is the operating company not being able to deliver the outcomes. And that is a joint venture with the other second largest FE college on our patch. So that's the first complication. Then there's the liquidity of CRC. They don't have sufficient liquidity for us to be able to repay the grant. An enforced recovery of the grant could well place them in serious financial difficulties. and the combined authorities expressly under the Devo deal prevented from destabilising the FE community. So that is another complication. The alternative is the recovery of the LGF investment subsequent to a sale. And in fact, clause 28 does in fact allow us to benefit from 100% of the proceeds of any sale. However, the contract does not allow us to force a sale. So we are in the situation whereby if we were to attempt to force a sale, CRC could simply attempt to request an extension of their period of the outcomes and attempt to deliver it, to deliver those outcomes. So in summary, what I'd say is we can get 100% of the value if they sell, but we can't force them to sell. We can sue for clawback, but they don't have the cash. We could incentivize a sale through threat of insolvency through our legal action, but in that circumstances and given the low deliverables, it is likely that CRC would soldier on and ask for an extension in the time frame to avoid default. Therefore, we will simply sustain a slow and underutilised apprenticeship academy that has vexated the business board for some time. The alternative is to wait to see how their current application fares in evaluation. We cannot prejudice against it or refuse to evaluate it. If it stacks up on its own merits, is low risk and offers commensurate benchmark outcomes and value for money, then we'd fund it. What is important to know is that in their EOI, they've offered the full value of the IMET asset as their match. So if their proposal stacks up and our evaluators would approve it and our entrepreneur assessment panel approves it, we get the asset anyway. That leads me to, if we did get the asset, what would we do with it? So that's Appendix 4, and that is pretty straightforward. A sale on the open market, going to take a lot of time, particularly in the current market conditions post-COVID. Urban and Civic would certainly, we would certainly get less than 10.5 million for that property. And Urban and Civic would certainly request their $500,000 of the land value back. There is on the enterprise zone AM Fresh, who are looking to create an R&D centre. We could sell it to them as an R&D centre, and we could pursue that. There is the potential for a materials R&D centre. Procentric in Photocentric in Peterborough have expressed interest. We could pursue them as a potential buyer, or Lisa. There is the potential of a manufacturing apprenticeship centre. Marshall's Aerospace have expressed very serious interest in taking it on and creating their own apprenticeship centre, and that for their supply chain, and working with our apprenticeship levy team to fund apprenticeships in SMEs in the area. There's the opportunity to rent it or sell it as an incubator, and Alia are out there and have expressed interest. We could ask someone to run it for us, but they'd almost certainly charge us to run it for us. And then finally, Urban and Civic themselves, the operators of the enterprise zone, have expressed interest in buying it if Marshalls were to rent it as an apprenticeship centre, because it very much suits Urban and Civic to have an apprenticeship centre on their enterprise zone in order to attract more tenants to the enterprise zone. Quite complicated, a lot of options. I'd be pleased to take questions.
Thanks, John. So a complicated little set of circumstances to weave our way through, but there's an opportunity if we can find a path through this, I think, both to fix a legacy issue that wasn't of our making, but it's on our patch, and I think we have to take responsibility for it. And in doing so, to come out of the other end in a much more favourable position and something that could add some real value one way or another, whether the cash is spent there or it's taken out and deployed to do something else more useful. I guess John, John's looking for a mandate to continue to work on this on all fronts to bring it to a position where we can come to the table with a recommendation for the board. Has anyone got any particularly strong feelings on this either way? Al, I see you've got your hand up.
Thanks, Austin. Yeah, possibly it's a case of the first part might have its own destiny depending on what happens from Cambridge perspective. It seems to me, given the original intent of the building, and somewhere on the line we're going to have to bite our lip on some kind of fiscal loss, the ultimate outcome surely is to the building to move on to somebody where there's some kind of ring fence or mandate about job creation or apprenticeships, which means at least it ultimately achieves its moral purpose, even if it had to go through a few jumps to get there. And that seems to me the best of a bad lot, if you like.
If I may respond to that, Al, looking at those options, in my view, the best option, if we can land it, is Marshall's. Whilst they're not willing to buy it, they are looking at renting it. Their business model has got what Cambridge Regional College didn't have. It's got a flagship, high volume, core user, Marshall's. Putting a broader market of apprenticeships on top of that core actually starts to give you a viable commercial model. So if we can get them to take it on as a rent, get Urban and Civic to buy offers, we could easily end up with better than the original outcomes in apprenticeships and the money back. That would be a dream outcome.
Anyone else have any strong views? Okay, I can't see any other hands up.
James was waving.
I just think that we need to allow John to carry on to find the right solution for this. It's quite clear, unfortunately, that the centre itself is clearly a very good building, but unfortunately it's just not attracting people to it. So we need to find a partner who will. So I would encourage John to continue and keep working and trying to find a solution if that's possible.
Yeah.
And Chair, can I just add that I would also validate everything John just said. To have Marshall 5 years ago, when I was at the college, part of the time to put the bid in before I met, we did enter into discussions with Marshall at the time. And at the time it was going to be branded Marshall IMET. So they're quite excited to be back in this position to be able to run apprenticeships. Their own current premises is busting at the seams. They can't continue with the provision. They've got big growth for 130 apprentices this year. They're also working closely with us on the new retraining scheme that we're looking to launch. So training adults to come into the sector. And now is a better time than ever because there's going to be a lot of people needing retraining that could potentially go into that sector. So there's massive potential with Marshall being people driving that with their brand.
Thank you, Fiona. Anyone else? Okay, John, I think you've got yourself a mandate to march on and work up these various proposals. We're noting items A and B. Let's move on then to 3.1, Integrated Business and Skills Insight Evaluation Programme. Alan Downton.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. Okay, the proposal is to consolidate business and skills activities to provide economic sector and place insight to inform the focus of current and future programmes, and also to monitor and evaluate the efficacy of current and past projects to inform the selection of the most effective intervention types for that focus. The consolidation will integrate a number of separate activities. At the moment, we've done a short bit of work with Greater Cambridge Partnership and we've co-funded a COVID-19 impact study. We want to take that a step further and build on that. As John alluded to earlier, once we've got that, we can then also review our skills and sector strategies, and then that can inform and refresh our local industrial strategy. There's also a plan in this integration to take some work that was through the Growth Observatory to identify clients for the new business growth service. And obviously we can feed the COVID-19 outputs or outcomes into that as well. And also carry on with the ongoing skills market insight for workforce skills and adult education. There's one additionality which is in the paper, which is basically to evaluate 16 historic completed LGF projects as well as part of this. The overall value is in tables 1 and 2, and it's split between business and the skills budgets. The report recommends resourcing the commissioning exercise through existing MTF budgets and seeks authorisation to consolidate these. There is more detail about the COVID-19, the Growth Observatory and the LGF in sections 4, 5 and 6, but I'm not going to go through them as we're short on time. I think it's worth noting at this stage that an output from this will be a detailed report published in September 20, followed by an updated refresh in April 21. The decisions required today are: 1, the Business Board is recommended to endorse the commissioning of an integrated business and skills insight and evaluation programme. 2, recommend the Combined Authority approve the consolidation of the SME Observatory budget and the LGF top slice and the BEIS supported fund as detailed in Table 1 to resource the commissioning. And then point 3 is that a recommendation will be made via the Skills Committee to the Combined Authority to approve the consolidated budgets in Table 2 to also resource the commissioning.
Okay. Thank you, Alan. The recommendation from the Skills Committee, is that going to the Combined Authority this week too?
I'm not sure on the timing. I think it's at the next one.
Okay. All right. Any questions, anyone? Al?
Thanks, Austin. Sorry, just a quick one. Combining those budgets is a fair chunk of change. What kind of cost are we talking about to undertake commissioning and that research?
The overall, it's looking like it'll be around about the £180,000 mark. In here, we're looking for 189,000. It's a wide ranging, and there is, we're already looking at the marketplace. Sorry, John.
Yeah, if I may, Al, it is a really big piece of work, and we are spending more on it, although that's possibly because we've got funding. We are spending more money on it than other LEPs are. I would say that there's a 50% chance we'll get this money back because LEPs don't have the money to do what is clearly necessary, which is a full econometric and survey refresh of sector strategies, skills strategy, the underpinning evidence base, in our case, the SPEAR and the LIS. That's all got to be done before we propose to you in September what we should be doing with COVID interventions. Because of that, the LEPs are saying they need to do it. They've got no money. I think it's 50% likely that government will pop up with a big bag of money in order to pay LEPs to do this. So we stand a good chance of getting a fair amount of this money back later. But I think the point I'm trying to make to you is, whilst 189k is a lot of money, it's a huge amount of work to revisit the SPEAR, the LIS, the skills strategy and 4 sector strategies, and additionally carry out econometric work that is better quality than what is being done at the moment most everywhere else, which is sentiment surveying businesses, which actually gives you very poor information right now, because asking businesses how they feel today actually provide you with a lot of good information about what interventions they'll need in December.
Thanks, John. Any other questions here? I can't see any. So So the ask here is to endorse the commissioning of the Integrated Business Skills Insight Programme, evaluation programme, and to recommend, particularly to the Combined Authority, approval of consolidation of these budgets. I'm going to take it that unless anyone shouts now, that we are going to accept that, in addition to noting item C as a unanimous decision by the Business Board. Please shout.
Can I ask a question? So, talking about combining this and commissioning it externally, are there a number of possible people who could do it, or is it something that, you know, it's a bit limited because it seems a bit specialist?
We are using the CPCA has got a framework 3471 which allows us to go to the market. We're going through a company called Mace Limited who will put that work out probably to various other parties that are specialists in this area.
But to answer your question a bit more clearly, no offence, by the way, Alan, sorry about that. There's a number on the list. Hatchery Generis are on the list, and they did one of them, the skills strategy. Metro Dynamics are on the list, they did the LIS. SQW are on the list, and there are two others that I can't remember at the moment. But there are 5 candidates, all of them capable of doing this and doing it within the sort of budgets we're looking at. But it is specialist.
Any other questions and comments? Can I just revisit then? Does anyone object to moving forward with this? Okay, I'll take that as a unanimous view. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Alan. Let's move on to 3.2. Rochelle, if you could help present the amendments to the Constitution, please.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, Chair, Mayor Palmer, members and officers. Just a brief one, actually. So annually, we update the Constitution. We had a governance review in March of this year. So the recommendations from the governance review and indeed other necessary changes have taken place. At the appendix, you see a track change version, which shows the proposed amendments. Going through in very, very brief detail. So the recruitment process of members, the appointment of the chair and the vice chair has been revised. We've included the induction programme as part of a necessity prior to appointment of members. We've introduced the concept of reserved members who can take the place if we have resignations, and we've clarified arrangements around resignations of members, including the chair and the vice chair. And so the recommendation today is for these amendments to be approved to the Combined Authority. Happy to take questions, Chair.
Thank you, Rochelle. Any questions here? I'm going to take it that we're all in acceptance of the recommendations here, unless anyone shouts otherwise now. Thank you. Can I also note that, thank you, Rochelle, that Andy has had to leave the meeting to move on to something else. That leaves us in a position where if anyone else should leave the meeting, we will be in core 8. We'll try and wrestle through these last few points very quickly. Appreciate we're running a little bit behind time. If you could bear with us, would be appreciated. All right, Dom, please, could you take us into 3.3? Thank you, Rochelle. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So this next item is a governance item. We are required, in accordance with the Constitution and the framework, the assurance framework, to set out a representative from the Business Board onto the Combined Authority Board. So this paper is seeking that the board agree on the appointment of yourself, Chair, and Andy Neely as the Vice Chair, as Business Board member representative to the Combined Authority Board, please.
Okay, so the recommendation is the nominations A and B. If anyone else would desperately like to do this, please shout. I didn't think so.
Not all at once.
In which case we'll consider that unanimous. Okay, 3.4. Nomination of business board member as chair of the Employment and Skills Board. Fiona. Thank you, Dom.
Thank you, Chair. I will keep this very brief. It's just, it goes very much in line with what Domenico has just said. Again, meeting in line with our constitution, boards in line, and the interface, and also to eliminate any gaps between the boards. So we are seeking that a business board member becomes the chair of the Employment and Skills Board, which also meets the expectations of the Department for Education as well.
Thank you, Fiona.
And you are seeking nominations from the business board, Fiona.
I am seeking nominations, so please do feel free to nominate if anyone does so wish.
Is there anyone who would like to self-nominate? Al?
Yes, Austin. I have spoken before about it and have said that I would be willing to, given my other links in education.
Thank you. If I was nominating a member of the board, it would be you, Al, on that basis.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Al. I did have a brief discussion with Al earlier because of his background, just not to put other board members on the spot, but however, wanted to open up to the whole board to if there was more than one nomination. But I do think that Al is well suited if he is the only one that's putting himself forward.
Mm-hmm. Just to be clear, does anyone else have an interest? Okay, then Al, you have our nomination, please. Presumably there's a process, is there still to go through, Fiona, to get...
Sorry, Chair, sorry to interrupt. So if it's just Al that is interested in the appointment, can I suggest that we amend the recommendation to nominating Al as the member, as the for the role of the chair of the Employment and Skill Board?
Yep.
Is that okay, Chair?
That's fine with me.
Fantastic. If there's no objection, then I assume it will be moved.
Any objections? We'll consider that accepted. Thank you, Al.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Fiona. Business Board Communications Update 3.5, please.
Brian Hyland should be online to give a quick update in Emily Martin's absence.
Yeah, thanks, Dom. Brian here. Hi, everybody. So in Emily's report, we're just asking you to note the contents of that and to paraphrase an update on the comms programme. I would paraphrase our activities into three main groups in that we've been undertaking, well, since COVID-19 landed on us all, particularly aggressive mailing campaign to our client database. Secondly, a very thorough social media campaign as well. And also Emily's team have been organising a series of comprehensive mayoral articles, blogs and formal press releases. And these have been serving two main purposes really, to spread the word and share updates on the central government schemes and the numerous schemes that have been launched and augmented as we've gone through this. And more personally to us, we've been using those communication methods to spread the word about our own interventions that we've launched here. And we've proved the comms works because just as a case in point, the overwhelming success and popularity of the COVID-19 grant scheme it's evidence that those messages were received loud and clear by the business community. So what we have at the moment is a very strong foundation for more and more comprehensive comms, and obviously further updates will be provided in future business board meetings. That's the update. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Any questions, comments?
Yeah, may I ask a question, please?
Sure.
Brian, is there an update yet on the recruitment process? I know obviously things are a little challenging at the moment, but Emily's and her team are doing a sterling job, but you can feel that they're under a degree of pressure. And at the last board meeting, you talked about recruiting someone in your team.
Yeah, that's right. And that role is not so much comms, but more around business and market engagement. And in fact, that advert is already out, so please share it. I'll send you the link on LinkedIn, and do nominate anybody you know. The closing date for that is mid-June. So yeah, that's the update on that. And that's, yeah, much needed resource to help the business and skills team particularly.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Faye. Any other questions? All right. Brian, thank you for that update. Please pass on our thanks to Emily for preparing the note. Okay, I think that brings us to the end of those agenda items. Moving on to the business board headlines for the combined authority. There's very few recommendations we're taking forward. I haven't actually seen the papers yet for the combined authority meeting. I think they've come out today. I'm assuming that all of these points will have been captured in terms of taking the recommendations forward. And no doubt they will be anxious to get an update on the COVID activities and where we sit with that. In terms of the business board forward plan at 4.2, so let me just go back one step. Are there any particular matters that any members would like me to carry forward to the combined authority beyond the mechanics of what's been spoken of today? If there are, please give me a shout. It is a great opportunity for us to, get a bit of airtime if needs be, if there are points that need to be made. In terms of 4.2, the forward plan has been circulated. Do members have any comments on the July forward plan? Okay, thank you for that. Don't see anyone. The date of the next meeting is scheduled for Monday, the 27th of July, and it is likely that this meeting will also need to be held remotely via Zoom video conferencing. Details will be scheduled nearer the date. That brings us to a close. Thanks everyone for your time and your inputs during the course of the last two hours or so. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Awesome.
Stay safe.
Thanks.
Everyone, bye.
Bye.
Bye.